Hello, Algebra 2 students who are doing some enrichment to earn a single point back per day on your averages in this spring 2020 online learning. If you have looked at the first worksheet that I've posted, you can either download that and print right on it, or you can write the problems out and do your work on your own notebook paper or graph paper or plain paper, whatever you want to use. Make sure that you turn in something that's perfect to me, because to get 1 point on your average, that's a really big 1 point. So we will go back and forth until you have perfect papers. So perfect papers means that everything has to be written neatly so I can read it. You have to have all your steps, and you have to have the right answer. So if you get every single one perfect except number 2 and number 17, I'll let you know that 2 and 17 need to be fixed. You'll redo 2 and 17 on another sheet of paper and email it back, and we'll work on it till it's done. Now, if you're struggling with something, the fastest way to get help is to log on from 12 to 12:30 on Zoom. The link is on our Canvas page for our class, and that way I can help you on the spot with your problems so that you can work them, and then there's no reason why you won't have a perfect paper. So we're going to get started. You will just fill in with me all the circled problems, because these are like skeleton notes. And so then you can do the problems, like problems 2, 3, and 4 are like number 1. And then you'll see that problems 6, 7, and 8 are like number 5. So you might even want to work those 3 problems before you watch the video, before you watch the next problem on number 5. So you could pause the video, do some work, and then restart the video. Okay, so here we go. On this problem, I know that if I'm going to solve an equation, I need to put all my x's on one side and my numbers on the other. We tend to do x's on the left. So I could say, well, on the left side, I'm going to subtract the 18x. So since 18x is positive on the right side, to move it to the left side, I subtract. Now 19's on the right side already, so I'll leave it there. And I need to add the 11 over to the right-hand side. So since 11 is negative on the left, it becomes positive when you move it to the right. Now get each side down to a single number. So 20 minus 18 is 2, x. 19 plus 11 is 30. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 15. Now, you're going to get a lot of fraction answers. So let's suppose on a different problem, you had gotten something like x equals -5 over -15. Then you would have said, well, negative over negative is positive, and 5 over 15 reduces to 1/3. So you're going to give me fraction answers not decimal answers, okay? Now we'll move on to number 5. In this group of problems, you are going to be distributing, and when you distribute, I notice that I have to say 5 times 2x is 10x, and 5 times -1 is -5, plus 8x equals, now some people want to do 6 minus 3 first, but that's not right. You have to first distribute and say -3 times positive 3x is -9x, and -3 times 4 is -12. So now our next step will be to get each side down to one letter and one number. So on the left side, my one letter is 10x plus 8x is 18x. And then I've got my one number is -5. So that was easy on that part. On the other side, my one letter is -9x, but then I have to put together 6 plus a -12, which is -6. So now these problems get to where they look like problems 1 through 4 looked. So I need to say 18x, and I'm going to have to say plus 9x, It's negative when it's on the right, so it becomes positive when it moves to the left. Negative 6 was already on the right. I'm going to have to move the negative 5 across the equal sign to the right-hand side. So I'm going to have to add 5. So now I've got 27x on the left. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1 on the right. You're welcome to use a calculator just to check your addition and multiplication and subtraction and division. That's fine. When I divide by 27, I have x equals negative 1 over 27. And there is no, I don't need to make it negative over negative is positive. The sign's just going to stay negative. And 1/27 does not reduce. So I'm done with this one. Now we're going to solve a bunch of equations where you have to clear fractions first. So we're going to start easier and get harder because I know that fractions are sometimes the things that rattle you the most when you're doing your own work. So my only fraction's 2/3. The denominator has a 3 in it. So that means I'm going to multiply everything by 3. Now, guys, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 terms in the equation currently. So I have to multiply the 3 by all 4 terms. So you have to take that 3 times each of the 4 terms. On this first term, since it's 3 times 2 over 3, I'm going to make it 3 over 1. Remember, the 3 and the 3 cancel from top to bottom. So you just have 2x over 1, which is just 2x. 3 times 5 is just 15. 3 times x, we would just write 3x. And minus 3 times 9 is minus 27. Now this problem looks like problems 1 through 4 looked. So I need to move the 3x to the left-hand side. Since 3x is positive right now, I'm going to subtract it to the left-hand side. Negative 27 is already on the right-hand side. Since 15 is positive where it is, I need to subtract it to the right-hand side. I get negative x equals negative 27 plus negative 15. If you do that on your calculator, you're going to get negative 42. So if negative x equals negative 42, positive x equals positive 42. You can divide both sides by a negative. Now, on this one, I also have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. And what I want to do is say, oh, I've got 2 fractions. If your denominators have a 5 and a 4, sometimes there's another way to do it. But the easiest thing to do is say, take your denominators and just multiply them by each other. And that's what you'll clear fractions with. So that means I'm going to multiply all my equation by 20. More specifically, that means I'm going to say 20 times 1/5 x minus 20 times 1 equals 20 times 2x plus 20 times 3/4. Okay? So since this is 20 times 1/5, I'm going to make it 20 over 1. Guys, 5 goes into 20 4 times because you can reduce from top to bottom. And then 4 times 1x is just 4x over the 1 is just 1. Minus 20 times 1 is just 20. 20 times 2x is 40x. And then here, since it's 20 times a fraction, let me make it 20 over 1 times 3 over 4. So 4 goes into 20 5 times. And then 5 times 3 is 15. Over the 1 is just 15. Now I'm back to where my equations look like problems 1 through 4, and that's the whole point. We always bring it back to something that looks simpler and therefore less intimidating. So I'm going to say 4x, 40x needs to be subtracted over. It's positive on the right, so I subtract to get it to the left. 15's on the right already. Negative 20 needs to be added to the right. So it's negative on the left, so I add it to get it to the right. 4x minus 40x, I believe, is negative 36x. and 15 plus 20 is 35. When I divide both sides by a negative 36, I get negative 35 over 36. So positive over negative just turns out negative. Now, it's all right to leave the negative on the bottom. Most people will either put it with the top or just sort of out in front of the fraction, but you're allowed to leave the negative on the bottom. 35 over 36 doesn't reduce, so I don't go to decimals. I just leave it right here. Going to number 15, this is the exact same kind of problem. You've got three fractions, though, is why it's a little bit harder, and I wanted to go through that. Now, again, there's multiple ways of doing this, but since we're distance learning, and you should have access to calculators, you can even use your online calculator tool, then the easiest thing to do is say my denominators are 6 and 2 and 4. So if I multiply 6 times 2 times 4, I believe that turns out to be 48. And that might be the easiest way for you to think about it. There is a smaller number I could use, but if you just go, let me multiply my denominators, and then what you're always sure to do is when you clear fractions, you'll always get nice, neat numbers. And you've got calculators to help you with the big numbers. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So I need to say 48 times 7 over 6x, and I'll make that 48 over 1 since that's a fraction, plus 48 over 1 times 5 over 2 equals 48 times x. I'm not going to write it as 48 over 1 since x isn't a fraction. There's no need to. And then plus 48 over 1 times 1 over 4. So again, guys, 6 goes into 48 8 times. And then 8 times 7x is 56x. Use your calculator if you need to. 2 goes into 48 24 times. Ooh, big number. 24 times 5 is going to be 120. And then I've got 48 times x, which is just easier to make 48x. 4 goes into 48 12 times, and then it's just 12 times 1 is 12. So again, I brought it back to where it looks like problems 1 through 4. So now I want to make sure that my 48x gets subtracted to the left. This 12 is already on the right, so leave it on the right. 120 gets subtracted to the right. 56 minus 48, I believe, is 8x. 12 minus 120, I think, is negative 108. I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And I'm going to get, now, 108 over 8 is a decimal, so I don't want decimal answers, which means I just need to reduce. So I noticed that 4 goes into both 108 and 4. So 4 goes into 108, I believe, 27 times, and 4 goes into 8 twice. And then that's as far as I can go. So we'll do one more example. All right, so here's your last example. Again, I'm giving you a 2 and a 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. So I'm going to multiply 3 by 6. Now, guys, if this was like a 7 and a 7, you would just multiply 3 by 7. If you only have one number in the denominator, even if it shows up in multiple places, just use it, okay? But since these are different, I'm multiplying them by each other. So I'm going to say 6 times 3x plus 8 all over 2. So that'll be 6 over 1 since it's a fraction times a fraction. Plus 6 times 10 equals 6 over 1 times 4x over 3 minus 6 times 5, okay? Now here, people want to sometimes make this harder than it has to be. That's 2 goes into 6 3 times. But then what you've got is 3 times 3x plus 8. And I'm going to write it this way so you remember, oh, that's a distribute problem, okay? Plus 6 times 10 is 60. Here, 3 goes into 6 twice, and 2 times 4x is 8x. minus 6 times 5 is just 30, okay? So now I have to go back and distribute here. So 3 times 3x is 9x. 3 times 8 is 24 plus 60 equals 8x minus 30. I'm going to get this side down to a single number and a single letter. So my letter's 9x. But look, I can add those two and get plus 84 equals 8x minus 30. Now I'm back to where my problem looks like it did in 1 through 4. And remember, that's always our goal, is make it a problem that looks just as simple as problems 1 through 4 did. So 9x minus the 8x equals negative 30. That stays where it is, so it stays negative 30. And then I have to say minus 84 when I move it over. So I've got x equals, and then I think that right here, negative 30 minus 84 adds up to negative 114, okay? So I've got two that worked out nice and neat. But guys, most of your answers are fractions. Don't be surprised by that. So let me remind you that if you're still struggling after rewatching these videos, that you can always meet me on Zoom from 12 to 12:30. Because even if you need some help, if you're getting help and you're getting better as a result, then I feel good about you getting the 1 point added to your average. So as long as we're making this an opportunity where you're learning and getting better as we go, I'm good with it. And if that means you need some help to be there, that's fine. Okay, good luck.